Forward. Everyone says the same thing. If an avoidant pulls away, stays quiet, or struggles to express feelings, then they must not truly love you. That belief has ended countless relationships. Forward. Yet, psychology tells a far more surprising story. Some of the strongest feelings are not always expressed with the loudest words. In fact, forward. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that emotional distance always means emotional emptiness. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, forward, the exact opposite can sometimes be true. The deeper the feelings become, the stronger the internal conflict grows. Forward. That conflict creates behaviors that most people completely misunderstand. They mistake fear for rejection. They mistake silence for indifference. Forward. They mistake hesitation for the absence of love. By the time they realize those assumptions were wrong, the relationship is often already over. This is where things become fascinating. Forward. An avoidant who truly loves someone rarely follows the romantic script that most people expect. There may be no constant reassurance. Forward. There may be no endless messages throughout the day. There may be no dramatic declarations of love. Instead, their emotions often leak through in ways they never intended. Forward. Their actions begin telling a story that their words struggle to explain. Those actions become small cracks in walls that took years, sometimes decades, to build. Forward. Most people never notice those cracks because they are looking for grand gestures instead of quiet changes. Forward. Psychologists who study attachment theory have spent years examining this pattern. Attachment styles develop early in life through repeated experiences with caregivers. Forward. When emotional closeness feels unpredictable, overwhelming, or unsafe during childhood, the brain learns powerful survival strategies. One of those strategies is emotional distancing. Forward. It becomes easier to rely on yourself than to risk disappointment from others. Over time, independence becomes more than a personality trait. It becomes emotional protection. Forward. This protection often continues into adulthood, shaping friendships, family relationships, and romantic partnerships in ways that even the avoidant person may not fully understand. Forward. That is one of the greatest misconceptions surrounding avoidant attachment. Many people believe avoidants simply do not care. The research suggests something much more complex. Forward. Many avoidants experience deep emotions, but they become skilled at suppressing or hiding those emotions. Their nervous system often treats emotional dependence as a potential threat. Forward. As feelings grow stronger, their instinct may push them toward distance instead of closeness. From the outside, this behavior looks cold. Inside, it can feel confusing, overwhelming, forward, and emotionally exhausting. This hidden struggle explains why so many relationships with avoidance become trapped in misunderstanding. Forward. One partner sees withdrawal and assumes rejection. The avoidant feels overwhelmed and believes distance will restore emotional balance. Forward. Neither person fully understands the invisible process happening beneath the surface. The result is frustration, confusion, and heartbreak on both sides. Forward. Many relationships do not end because love was missing. They end because the language of love was completely different. Forward. There is another important truth that rarely receives enough attention. Not every avoidant who returns after pulling away is expressing genuine love. Forward. Not every silent period is evidence of emotional depth. Not every confusing behavior deserves endless patience. Forward. This distinction matters because many people remain trapped in unhealthy relationships while convincing themselves that mixed signals are proof of hidden affection. They wait. Forward. They analyze every message. They search for meaning in every period of silence. Eventually, they begin ignoring their own emotional needs. Forward. That is exactly why this conversation is so important. Genuine emotional investment looks very different from manipulation, inconsistency, or breadcrumbing. Forward. Breadcrumbing creates just enough attention to keep someone emotionally attached without offering real commitment or steady effort. Genuine love moves in the opposite direction. Forward. It creates increasing trust, increasing consistency, and increasing willingness to become emotionally available over time. The process may be slow, forward, especially for someone with avoidant attachment, but it moves forward rather than in circles, forward. One of the lesser-known discoveries in attachment psychology is that avoidants often communicate with behavior long before they communicate with words, forward. While many people search for verbal reassurance, the strongest evidence may appear somewhere else entirely. Small routines begin to change. Priorities slowly shift, forward. Emotional walls develop tiny openings. They begin making room for another person in ways they never expected. These changes are rarely dramatic, forward. That is exactly why they are so easy to miss. Another surprising fact is that many avoidants are not fully aware of these changes themselves, forward. Their protective habits developed automatically over many years. As genuine attachment grows, their behavior begins changing before their conscious mind completely understands why, forward. They may suddenly remember details about your life that they previously overlooked. They may quietly solve problems without asking for recognition, forward. They may begin including you in future decisions almost without realizing it. These subtle shifts reveal far more than rehearsed romantic speeches, forward. This does not mean every emotionally distant person is secretly in love. That assumption creates unrealistic expectations and can keep people trapped in painful relationships, forward. Healthy love always includes respect. Healthy love includes honesty. Healthy love includes accountability. Healthy love includes consistency over time, forward. These qualities matter regardless of attachment style. An avoidant who truly loves you is still responsible for treating you with kindness and respect. Fear explains behavior, forward. It does not excuse harmful patterns that continue without growth. Throughout this video, forward, you will discover the signs that attachment experts and relationship psychology consistently associate with genuine emotional investment in avoidant individuals, forward. Some of these signs appear so quietly that they are almost invisible unless you know exactly where to look, forward. Others directly contradict popular relationship advice shared across social media. By the end, forward, you will understand why certain behaviors that seem ordinary on the surface may actually reveal deep emotional change beneath years of carefully built emotional protection, forward. You will also learn how to separate authentic love from empty promises, temporary attention, and confusing hot and cold behavior, forward. That difference could completely change the way you understand past relationships, current relationships, and even future ones. The goal is not to romanticize emotional distance, forward. The goal is to recognize genuine emotional growth when it is truly happening, and to avoid mistaking unhealthy patterns for hidden affection, forward. Some of the signs we will discuss become almost impossible for an avoidant to hide once real attachment takes root. They may resist them. They may not even recognize them immediately, forward. Yet those behaviors continue appearing because authentic connection slowly becomes stronger than fear. That quiet transformation is where the real story begins. Welcome to the channel. Forward. If you enjoy exploring the hidden psychology behind relationships and attachment styles, subscribe now and join our community. Forward. Let us begin by uncovering the subtle signs that reveal when an avoidant truly loves you, even when they struggle to say the words. Forward. One of the first signs that an avoidant truly loves you is also one of the easiest to miss. It is not a grand confession. It is not an emotional speech. Forward. It is not constant texting or dramatic romance. Instead, something much quieter begins to happen. The walls around their private world start to develop small openings. At first, forward, those openings seem almost meaningless. Then, over time, they begin forming a pattern that is almost impossible to ignore. For an avoidant, privacy is more than a preference. Forward. It is protection. Their personal routines, private thoughts, emotions, and inner struggles often feel like territory that nobody else should enter. Forward. Many people think this behavior is simply independence. Psychology suggests there is much more happening beneath the surface. Forward. Researchers studying attachment have found that avoidant individuals often develop a strong need for emotional self-reliance. During childhood, forward, depending on others may not have felt consistently safe or rewarding. As a result, their brain learns to solve problems alone. They become skilled at handling stress privately. Forward. They keep difficult emotions hidden. They rarely ask for comfort, even when they desperately need it. This habit becomes automatic. Forward. That is why emotional privacy becomes one of their strongest defenses. It gives them a sense of control. As long as nobody gets too close, they believe they cannot be deeply hurt. Forward. Breaking that pattern feels risky because it requires trusting another person with parts of themselves they have spent years protecting. Forward. This is why the smallest invitations into their world often carry enormous meaning. One day they casually mention their morning routine. Forward. Another day they tell you about a hobby they normally keep to themselves. Then they talk about a difficult experience from years ago. None of these conversations seem dramatic. Forward. In fact, they may sound completely ordinary. Yet for someone with an avoidant attachment style, these moments often represent major emotional steps. Forward. Many people overlook this because they expect love to arrive through powerful words. Avoidants often communicate in the opposite direction. Their trust appears first. Forward. Their words catch up later. There is another surprising detail that relationship experts frequently observe. Avoidants often reveal themselves in pieces rather than all at once. Forward. One conversation may become unexpectedly personal. The following week, they seem emotionally distant again. This inconsistency can confuse their partner. However, forward, it does not always mean their feelings disappeared. Sometimes their nervous system simply becomes overwhelmed after experiencing unusual vulnerability. Forward. Think of it like someone slowly opening a heavy door that has remained locked for years. They open it slightly, then they close it again. Later, they open it a little farther. Forward. Each step feels safer than the last. Progress happens gradually because emotional safety develops gradually. Forward. One lesser-known fact about avoidant attachment is that trust often grows silently before emotional expression does. Their behavior changes before their language changes. Forward. They begin allowing another person into parts of daily life that once belonged only to them. Perhaps they start inviting you into ordinary routines. Forward. They tell you about their workday without being asked. They mention family stories they usually avoid discussing. They begin sharing opinions that they once kept private. Forward. They talk about dreams they rarely admit aloud. These moments may appear small, but together they reveal something much larger. Their inner world is no longer completely off limits. Forward. This quiet shift becomes even more meaningful when they begin discussing the future. Forward. Avoidants often avoid making long-term emotional commitments because future plans create emotional vulnerability. Speaking about next month, next year, forward, or future goals naturally includes another person in their life. That simple act can feel uncomfortable because it reduces emotional distance. Forward. Yet when genuine love grows stronger than fear, future conversations slowly become more common. They might casually mention a trip several months away. Forward. They may ask your opinion before making an important decision. They begin using language that naturally includes both of you instead of only themselves. Forward. They rarely recognize how significant these small changes actually are. Another powerful sign appears in the way they pay attention. Forward. Many people assume avoidants are emotionally disconnected because they often remain quiet. In reality, they are frequently observing much more than they express. Forward. They remember your favorite drink. They remember the story about your childhood pet. They remember the date of an important meeting. Forward. They remember the name of a family member you mentioned weeks earlier. The remarkable part is that they often never announce these observations. They simply act on them. Forward. One day, they ask how your presentation went because they remembered the date. Another day, they bring up a conversation you thought they barely listened to. Forward. They quietly adjust plans because they remembered something important to you. There is no performance. There is no attempt to impress you. Forward. Their attention simply reveals that you occupy space in their mind, even during moments when they appear emotionally distant. Forward. This difference is important because dramatic declarations are easy. Anyone can speak beautiful words during an emotional moment. Consistent attention is much harder to fake. Forward. Remembering details requires genuine mental and emotional investment. Forward. It reflects that another person's life has become meaningful enough to remain present, even when they are physically apart. Forward. Attachment researchers often note that secure emotional bonds are built through repeated moments of responsiveness rather than occasional grand gestures. For avoidants, forward, these repeated moments may become their primary language of love. Every remembered detail, every shared memory, every private thought, forward, and every invitation into their normally protected world quietly says the same thing without ever speaking the words directly. Little by little, forward, the distance that once defined them begins to shrink. And the person who once guarded every corner of their inner life starts allowing someone else to stand beside them. Forward. Even though another powerful fear is still waiting beneath the surface, ready to pull them back the moment emotional closeness begins to feel too real. Forward. One of the most confusing experiences with an avoidant happens just when everything seems to be going well. The connection feels stronger. Conversations become more personal. Forward. Trust begins to grow. Then, almost without warning, they become distant. Messages slow down. Their energy changes. They seem emotionally unavailable again. To someone on the outside, forward, it looks like they suddenly stopped caring. Yet, attachment psychology reveals a much more complicated process unfolding beneath the surface. Forward. This pattern is often called the approach-avoid cycle. It is one of the most studied behaviors in people with avoidant attachment. The closer they feel to someone, forward, the more two powerful forces begin pulling in opposite directions. One part of them wants connection. The other part fears the vulnerability that connection requires. Forward. This creates an internal battle that many avoidants never openly describe. They enjoy feeling close to you. They appreciate your presence. They begin trusting you. Forward. Then their nervous system quietly sounds an alarm. Emotional closeness starts feeling unfamiliar. It may even feel dangerous, despite the relationship being healthy. Forward. Their instinct tells them to create space before they become too emotionally dependent. This reaction is rarely planned. In many cases, it happens automatically. Forward. Researchers who study attachment explain that avoidant behaviors are deeply connected to emotional regulation. Their brain has learned that distance reduces emotional pressure. Forward. Pulling away becomes a coping strategy rather than a carefully calculated decision. That does not mean the behavior is healthy. Forward. It simply means there is often more fear than intention behind it. This is why many avoidants appear to move closer and farther away in repeated waves. Forward. One week they seem warm and engaged. The next week they become unusually quiet. Later they reconnect as though nothing happened. Forward. For someone who does not understand attachment psychology, this pattern feels confusing and painful. It often raises difficult questions. Was the affection real? Did their feelings disappear? Was everything only temporary? The answer depends on something many people overlook. Not every return means genuine love. Forward. Not every period of distance comes from fear. This distinction may be one of the most important lessons in understanding avoidant behavior. Forward. A person who truly cares usually reconnects with purpose. They do not simply drift back because they feel lonely or bored. They return because the relationship still matters to them. Forward. Their actions begin repairing the distance they created. They make an effort to restore trust instead of pretending nothing happened. Forward. This is very different from manipulative hot and cold behavior. Manipulation creates confusion to maintain control. Forward. Emotional availability appears only when the other person starts pulling away. Attention becomes a tool rather than an expression of care. The cycle repeats without meaningful growth. Forward. Over time, the relationship feels emotionally exhausting because nothing actually changes. Healthy emotional regulation looks different. Forward. An avoidant may recognize they became overwhelmed. They may take a short period to process their emotions. Then they return ready to reconnect. Forward. They may not explain everything perfectly, especially early in the relationship, but their actions begin showing increasing responsibility. They understand that distance affected you. Forward. They attempt to rebuild closeness instead of expecting you to simply accept repeated disappearances. Forward. One lesser-known finding in attachment research is that many avoidants process emotions more slowly than people with secure attachment styles. During emotionally intense moments, forward, they often become overwhelmed. Their first response is to reduce stimulation by creating space. Ironically, forward, the full emotional impact sometimes reaches them only after they are alone. Forward. This delayed emotional processing explains why some avoidants seem calmer during conflict, but become more reflective days later. Forward. While another person may process emotions immediately through conversation, an avoidant often needs solitude before understanding the depth of their own feelings. Forward. That delay creates another misunderstanding. Their silence is often interpreted as emotional indifference. In reality, forward, they may still be sorting through emotions they could not access during the conflict itself. This does not excuse harmful behavior. Forward. Every adult remains responsible for communicating respectfully. Forward. Yet, understanding this pattern helps explain why genuine affection sometimes becomes more visible after a period of withdrawal rather than during emotional intensity. Forward. Another surprising detail is that avoidants frequently reconnect in subtle ways before making direct emotional statements. They ask how your day went. Forward. They send an article that reminded them of you. They check whether you arrived home safely. They continue conversations that seemed unfinished. Forward. These small efforts may appear ordinary, but they reveal that emotional distance did not erase emotional attachment. The strongest indicator is not the withdrawal itself. Forward. It is the quality of the return. Does the relationship become healthier over time? Do they slowly communicate better? Do they show greater awareness of your feelings? Forward. Do they accept responsibility when their distance causes pain? These questions matter far more than counting how many times someone comes back. Real love moves toward growth. Forward. Fear may slow that growth, but it does not stop it forever. An avoidant who genuinely values the relationship gradually learns that emotional safety comes from connection, forward, not endless escape. Each return becomes a little more intentional. Each conversation becomes a little more honest, forward. Each period of distance becomes shorter because trust slowly begins replacing self-protection, forward. Still, there is another transformation that reveals even more than returning after pulling away. Eventually, forward, their feelings become strong enough that words no longer matter as much as the steady choices they make every single day. Forward. And those quiet actions begin revealing a depth of commitment that even they struggle to hide. Forward. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is believing that love is measured by words alone. Movies, songs, forward, and social media often teach that the deepest feelings always come with dramatic confessions and constant reassurance. An avoidant often breaks that expectation completely. Forward. Their emotions may be powerful, but expressing those emotions through language can feel uncomfortable, unfamiliar, or even frightening. As a result, forward, the strongest evidence of their love is often found somewhere much quieter. It appears in the choices they make every single day. For many avoidants, actions feel safer than words. Forward. Saying I love you requires emotional exposure. Following through on a promise does not feel nearly as risky. Talking about lifelong commitment may create anxiety. Forward. Helping someone through a difficult week feels more manageable. This difference is important because it changes where you should look for signs of genuine affection. Instead of asking, forward, what are they saying? A better question becomes, what are they consistently doing? Forward. Attachment psychologists have long observed that avoidant individuals often express attachment through practical behavior rather than emotional conversation. Forward. They may struggle to describe what they feel, yet they naturally look for ways to make another person's life easier. Forward. This pattern often develops because practical support feels more controllable than emotional vulnerability. That support may appear in surprisingly ordinary moments. Forward. They remember you have an early appointment and send a simple message wishing you well. They quietly bring you something you needed without asking for praise. Forward. They notice you are overwhelmed and offer help before you request it. They fix a problem that has been causing you stress. None of these actions create dramatic scenes. Forward. Yet each one requires attention, effort, and emotional investment. Forward. One lesser known fact about avoidant attachment is that many avoidants become highly observant partners once they feel emotionally connected. They may not openly discuss every feeling forward, but they often pay close attention to patterns. They notice changes in your mood. They recognize when your routine shifts forward. They quietly collect details that help them understand what matters to you. This careful observation allows them to support you in ways that often go unnoticed forward. You mention an important meeting once, and weeks later, they ask how it went. You casually mention your favorite snack, and they remember it months afterward. Forward. You tell them about a stressful family situation, and they quietly check whether everything turned out well. These moments are rarely accidental. Forward. They reflect emotional attention that continues even when there is no immediate reward. Another powerful shift appears in how they spend their time. Forward. Avoidants usually value independence very deeply. Solitude often helps them regulate emotions and restore a sense of balance. Forward. Their personal routines become an important source of comfort. Because of this, giving someone consistent time carries much greater meaning than many people realize. Forward. When they begin rearranging their schedule to include you, something significant is changing. They willingly sacrifice personal time. Forward. They invite you into routines they once protected. They begin checking your availability before making plans. Forward. They naturally include you in ordinary parts of life rather than limiting the relationship to occasional moments. To many people, these actions seem completely normal. Forward. For an avoidant, they often represent major emotional progress. Time is one of the few resources that cannot be replaced. Forward. Giving it freely means another person has become important enough to reshape long-established habits. That quiet adjustment speaks with remarkable clarity. Forward. There is another reason dependable actions matter so much. Words can appear during emotional highs. Promises can be made in moments of excitement. Forward. Anyone can sound deeply committed for a few hours. Consistency is far more difficult. Consistency requires making similar choices across weeks, months, and even years. Forward. It requires showing up when life becomes stressful. It requires maintaining care even after the excitement of a new relationship fades. Forward. Relationship researchers repeatedly find that long-term satisfaction depends less on occasional romantic gestures and more on reliable patterns of supportive behavior. Forward. Trust grows through repetition. Safety grows through predictability. Emotional security develops when someone repeatedly demonstrates that their actions match their intentions. Forward. For avoidants, this gradual consistency often becomes their strongest expression of love. Instead of overwhelming you with emotional speeches, they quietly become dependable. Forward. They answer when they say they will. They keep their promises. They respect your boundaries. They remember what matters to you. Forward. They become someone you can rely on during ordinary days, not only during special occasions. Perhaps the most revealing moments appear during hardship. When everything is going well, forward. Affection is easy. The real test arrives when life becomes difficult. You face disappointment. You receive bad news. You feel exhausted. You struggle with uncertainty. Forward. An avoidant who genuinely cares often steps forward in practical ways during these moments, even if they struggle to offer perfect emotional words. They help solve problems. Forward. They reduce your stress where they can. They remain present instead of disappearing at the first sign of discomfort. Forward. This behavior surprises many people because it contradicts the common belief that avoidants always run from emotional intensity. In reality, forward, genuine attachment often motivates them to stay engaged, even when they feel uncertain about how to express themselves verbally. Of course, dependable actions do not mean perfection. Forward. They may still hesitate before discussing vulnerable feelings. They may still need time to process emotional conversations. Forward. They may still express affection differently from someone with a secure attachment style. The difference is that their behavior steadily moves in one direction. Forward. Their care becomes easier to recognize because it appears repeatedly. Their reliability grows stronger. Their effort becomes more intentional. Over time, forward, the gap between what they feel and what they can comfortably say begins to shrink. Then another quiet change begins to appear. Forward. The emotional armor that once protected every vulnerable part of them starts becoming heavier than the trust they are building. And little by little, forward, they begin lowering defenses that once seemed impossible to move. Forward. Perhaps the greatest sign that an avoidant truly loves you is not found in a romantic gesture or a perfectly chosen sentence. It appears when something much harder begins to change. Forward. Their emotional armor slowly starts coming down. This armor has protected them for years, sometimes for decades. It was built through painful experiences, disappointment, forward, fear of rejection, or the belief that depending on another person was unsafe. That protection did not disappear overnight, forward, and it does not disappear simply because they meet someone they care about. Yet genuine love creates something powerful, forward. It gives them a reason to question the very defenses they once believed they could never live without. For an avoidant, emotional armor is not always easy to recognize. Forward. It often appears as emotional distance, sarcasm during uncomfortable conversations, changing the subject, staying unusually logical, or becoming silent when feelings become intense. Forward. Many people mistake these reactions for a lack of love. In reality, they are often automatic protective habits. Their nervous system has learned that vulnerability carries risk. Forward. So the first response is to reduce emotional exposure before they feel overwhelmed. This becomes especially noticeable during disagreements. In the early stages of a relationship, forward, an avoidant may quickly shut down when conflict appears. Instead of discussing the problem, they may withdraw into silence. They may leave the conversation. Forward. They may insist that everything is fine even when it clearly is not. They are not necessarily trying to punish the other person. More often, forward, they are trying to escape emotional pressure that feels larger than they know how to manage. Then something begins to shift. As trust grows, forward, those defensive reactions slowly become less automatic. The disagreement still makes them uncomfortable. Their heart may still race. Their instinct may still tell them to leave. Forward. Yet they remain present a little longer than before. They listen instead of immediately closing off. They respond instead of disappearing. These changes seem small, forward. But for someone whose first instinct has always been emotional distance, they represent enormous progress, forward. Relationship researchers often describe this as increasing emotional tolerance, forward. Emotional tolerance is the ability to stay connected during uncomfortable feelings instead of escaping from them, forward. People with secure attachment usually develop this skill naturally over time. Avoidants often have to build it deliberately, one difficult conversation after another, forward. Each time they remain engaged instead of retreating, their nervous system slowly learns that closeness does not always lead to danger, forward. Another surprising sign appears in the length of emotional conversations. At first, deeply personal discussions may last only a few minutes before they become visibly uncomfortable. Forward. They may change the subject or become distracted. They may respond with very short answers because they are trying to reduce emotional intensity. Later, forward, something different begins happening. Those same conversations continue a little longer. They ask questions instead of avoiding them. Forward. They stay emotionally present even when the discussion feels difficult. Progress is measured in minutes before it is measured in hours. Forward. This gradual change often surprises both people in the relationship. The avoidant may not even realize they are becoming more emotionally available. Forward. They simply notice that conversations which once felt unbearable now feel manageable. That quiet shift is one of the strongest indicators that trust has started replacing fear. Forward. There is another layer that many people never see. Avoidants rarely speak about their deepest fears early in a relationship. Forward. Those fears often remain hidden behind confidence or independence. Yet genuine attachment slowly creates enough safety for those hidden thoughts to surface. Forward. One day they mention an experience from childhood that they have never discussed before. Another day they admit they struggle with trusting people. Forward. Later they quietly confess that losing someone important scares them more than they expected. Forward. These moments are incredibly significant because they require something avoidants naturally resist. They require exposing uncertainty instead of appearing completely self-sufficient. Forward. They stop protecting the image of being unaffected and begin revealing the person underneath. Forward. Attachment experts often point out that vulnerability grows through repeated experiences of emotional safety. Forward. Every time an avoidant shares something deeply personal and receives understanding instead of judgment, the brain records a new experience. Forward. That experience slowly weakens old beliefs that vulnerability always leads to rejection. The process happens little by little. Forward. One conversation alone rarely changes years of emotional conditioning. Another powerful change appears in the way they handle mistakes. In many avoidants, forward, admitting fault feels surprisingly threatening. An apology requires acknowledging emotional impact, and that can trigger feelings of shame or inadequacy. As a result, forward, they may once have defended themselves quickly or withdrawn before discussing what happened. When love becomes deeper, that pattern begins to soften. Forward. Instead of disappearing after an argument, they return. Instead of pretending nothing happened, they acknowledge your feelings. Instead of protecting their pride at all costs, forward, they accept responsibility for their actions. Their apologies may still be simple. They may not deliver long emotional speeches. Forward. Yet the sincerity becomes obvious because it is followed by changed behavior. They do not only say they are sorry, they begin making different choices. Forward. This distinction matters because anyone can apologize during an emotional moment. Lasting change requires much more than words. It requires the willingness to tolerate discomfort, forward, reflect honestly, and choose connection over self-protection, forward. One lesser-known finding in attachment research is that emotional vulnerability often develops in layers rather than all at once, forward. People sometimes expect a dramatic breakthrough where every wall suddenly disappears. That almost never happens. Growth is usually much quieter. The avoidant shares one fear, forward. Weeks later, they reveal another. They stay through one difficult conversation. Later, they remain through an even harder one. Every small step strengthens the next. Forward. Eventually, the person who once guarded every emotion so carefully begins allowing another human being to see not only their strengths, but also their fears, disappointments, regrets, forward, and hopes. Those moments rarely arrive with dramatic announcements. They arrive through quiet courage, repeated trust, forward, and the growing belief that this relationship is worth facing the discomfort they spent years trying to avoid. As those defenses continue to fall, forward, another remarkable change begins to appear. Their private future slowly stops belonging to them alone, forward, and they begin making space for someone else inside the life they once planned entirely by themselves. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, forward, talking about the future is often much more difficult than most people realize. To many people, making plans for next month or next year feels exciting. It creates hope and stability, forward. For an avoidant, those same conversations can quietly trigger a sense of pressure. The future represents commitment, and commitment requires emotional investment, forward. The more emotionally invested they become, the more vulnerable they feel. That is why many avoidants keep their future intentionally open, forward. It allows them to believe they can leave if life becomes emotionally overwhelming. This habit creates a feeling of safety, even when they deeply care about someone, forward. That is exactly why one of the strongest signs of genuine love appears when this pattern slowly begins to change. Instead of speaking only about their own plans, forward, they begin naturally including you in them. The change is usually so subtle that many people overlook it, forward. One day, they mention a concert several months away and casually ask whether you would like to go. Later, they talk about spending a holiday together, forward. They discuss a trip they would enjoy sharing with you. They mention a future goal and automatically include your place within it. None of these conversations sound dramatic, forward. Yet each one represents something important. They are beginning to picture tomorrow with another person standing beside them, forward. Psychologists often explain that avoidant individuals value emotional independence because it helps them feel secure. Throughout much of their life, forward, depending on another person may have felt risky. As a result, their future plans often revolve around complete self-reliance, forward. Their decisions become centered on one person and one person alone. Then genuine attachment begins changing that perspective. Instead of asking only, "What do I want?" forward, they quietly begin asking, "How does this affect both of us?" This shift may sound simple, but psychologically it represents a major transformation, forward. Future-oriented thinking requires trust. It requires believing that another person will still be present. It requires accepting uncertainty instead of protecting against it, forward. For someone whose instinct has always been emotional self-protection, that step requires tremendous courage, forward. One lesser-known discovery in relationship psychology is that commitment often develops mentally before it is expressed emotionally, forward. Long before someone openly speaks about lifelong plans, their daily decisions begin revealing where their mind is going, forward. They naturally organize their life in ways that make room for another person. This happens in surprisingly ordinary ways. They check your schedule before making weekend plans, forward. They consider your preferences when choosing a destination. They ask for your opinion before accepting an important opportunity, forward. They think about how major decisions could affect both of you rather than only themselves. These moments often feel completely normal inside healthy relationships, forward. Yet for an avoidant, they reflect a growing willingness to share control over the future. Another remarkable sign appears through small sacrifices. Forward. Avoidants usually protect their routines carefully. Their independence gives them comfort because it reduces emotional uncertainty. As genuine love grows, forward, they slowly become more flexible. They adjust their schedule so both of you can spend time together. They move plans around because something matters to you. Forward. They willingly compromise instead of insisting that everything happen their way. This does not happen because they suddenly stop valuing independence. Forward. It happens because the relationship itself begins feeling emotionally safe enough to deserve flexibility. That distinction is extremely important. Forward. Many people believe compromise always feels easy when someone is in love. Psychology suggests something different. Healthy compromise often remains uncomfortable. Forward. Especially for someone with avoidant tendencies. The difference is that discomfort no longer automatically leads to withdrawal. Instead of viewing compromise as losing freedom, forward, they gradually begin seeing it as building connection. Researchers studying long-term relationships frequently find that successful couples are not defined by perfect agreement. Forward. They are defined by repeated cooperation. Partners who consistently consider each other's needs build stronger emotional security over time. Forward. This pattern becomes especially meaningful when an avoidant begins participating in it voluntarily. Another subtle sign appears in the language they use. Forward. Earlier in the relationship, many conversations centered around I. My plans, my schedule, my goals, my decisions. As emotional safety increases, forward, another word quietly becomes more common. We could visit there. We should try that. We might enjoy this. We could plan something together. Forward. This small change often happens naturally. They may not even notice they are doing it. Forward. Yet language frequently reflects emotional thinking before people become consciously aware of it. The future is no longer organized around complete emotional independence. Forward. Another person has become part of the picture. There is another reason this matters. Avoidants rarely invest deeply in futures they believe will disappear quickly. Forward. When they repeatedly include you in long-term conversations, they are revealing that your presence has become psychologically stable in their mind. Forward. They are no longer interacting only with today's relationship. They are beginning to emotionally prepare for tomorrow's relationship as well. Of course, forward, future planning alone is never enough. Someone can make beautiful promises without following through. Forward. Someone can speak about distant dreams while avoiding responsibility in the present. Real love always connects future intentions with present behavior. Forward. Their promises become supported by consistent actions. Their plans become supported by dependable effort. Their words become supported by reliability. Forward. This combination creates emotional safety. Forward. Perhaps the most surprising part of this transformation is that it often happens quietly. There is rarely one dramatic conversation where they suddenly announce complete commitment. Forward. Instead, dozens of small choices slowly reveal that another person has become part of the life they once planned entirely alone. Every shared holiday, every joint decision, forward, every thoughtful compromise, and every future conversation quietly replaces fear with trust. As that trust grows stronger, something even more remarkable begins to happen. Forward. The relationship stops feeling like a threat to their independence and starts feeling like a source of security. When that moment arrives, forward, They begin making a choice that once seemed almost impossible. Even when emotional closeness feels uncomfortable, they stop running from it and begin choosing connection instead. Forward. Love from an avoidant rarely arrives wrapped in dramatic words or perfect romantic moments. More often, it appears through quiet changes that grow stronger over time. Forward. A little more trust, a little more openness, a little more consistency. These small steps may seem ordinary, but together they tell a powerful story. Forward. They reveal that someone who once protected every part of their inner world is slowly choosing connection instead of distance. That is why actions matter so much more than promises. Forward. Anyone can say beautiful words during an emotional moment. Real love continues long after those moments pass. It shows up in the effort to understand you. Forward. It appears in the willingness to stay through difficult conversations. It grows through dependable actions, honest apologies, shared plans. Forward. And the quiet decision to let another person become part of a life that was once carefully guarded. At the same time, it is important to remember one truth that should never be ignored. Forward. Attachment style explains behavior, but it does not excuse harmful behavior. Every healthy relationship requires respect, honesty, accountability, forward, and consistent effort from both people. Love is not measured by endless waiting or accepting repeated emotional pain. Genuine emotional growth moves forward. Even if the progress is slow, it becomes visible through real change, not repeated excuses. Forward. The strongest relationships are built when both people choose to grow together. Fear becomes smaller. Trust becomes stronger. Emotional walls begin to lose their purpose. Forward. That transformation does not happen in a single day, but every step toward openness creates a stronger foundation for lasting connection. Forward. If this video helped you understand avoidant psychology in a new way, take a moment to leave a like. Forward. It helps this channel reach more people searching for real answers instead of confusing myths. Subscribe as well for more videos that explore the hidden patterns behind attachment, forward, relationships, and human behavior. The most important lesson to remember is simple. An avoidant who truly loves you may still carry protective walls. They may still move carefully forward. They may still struggle with vulnerability. But as trust grows, one thing becomes impossible to hide. Their consistent actions will always speak louder than their fears. And over time, forward, those actions reveal the love that words alone never could.